Iraq, the cradle of human civilization, the birthplace of Abraham. But we're here to discover the story of a 20th century palace and the dramatic American-led takedown of one of the more brutal dictators the second half of the 20th century.
Oh, not another brutal dictator.
No, there are so many. There's so many to choose from, aren't there? Pol Pot, Stalin, but this one is the one. This is one of the one that everyone loves to hate.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. To quote Bush Jr., Saddam Hussein.
Right.
I mean, the guy was awful.
Not a nice man, I hear.
Not a nice man.
Even by brutal dictator standards.
Even by brutal dictator standards. I mean, gassing your own people, that's pretty vicious. It's a shame that some of the buildings are left to ruin, but with this one, maybe it's a good thing. This is Where Did Everyone Go? With me, Dr. Sasha Auerbach.
And me, Tom Ward. A journey into the weird history of abandoned places. I'm seeing a flat, quite barren-looking landscape with a few palm trees and a river. But the dominating feature here is this hill with a huge building on top.
Yeah, it is absolutely massive. I mean, these huge blocks of stone.
Yeah, and inside, the rooms are vast. The doors are gigantic. The whole scale of the place is ridiculous.
Yeah, you can tell that no expense was spared to make this thing. There are marble floors, intricate carvings on the walls, beautiful columns, staircases, everywhere you look. Just luxury, luxury.
Yeah, but you can also see that it's been thoroughly looted, even vandalized in places. There's graffiti everywhere. A lot of it's in English as well. Okay then, Sasha. Why did Saddam Hussein have this palace built, and where did everyone go?
Where indeed? Well, let's start with Saddam Hussein. He was the leader of the Middle Eastern country of Iraq from 1979 to 2003, and he was absolutely ruthless. He killed off and overthrew all of his opponents and embarked on creating a cult of personality to make him the essential glue that held Iraqi society together. He brooked no defiance, no opposition. Soon after coming to power, he looked to expand his territory, and he fixed his attention on the oil-rich lands of neighboring Iran. And he must have thought, well, I have a more modern army, I've got better military technology, I can take those oil fields and really supercharge my new Iraqi state, and I'm pretty sure I can get away with it.
Right. Well, I'm sensing there was probably some consequences because stealing land very rarely goes without a hitch.
Yeah, he really underestimated the power of the Iranian army and the resistance of the Iranian people. Key part of Saddam Hussein's plan and why he thought he could get away with it has to do with the ethnic differences between Iran and Iraq. So ethnically, his people in Iraq, not everyone in Iraq, but his people in particular, are Arab, of Arab ethnicity. The Iranians are Persian, so different language, different culture. There are minorities of each group in the other country. And Saddam's assumption, or his belief, and it was very optimistic, was that if he invaded these bordering lands, which had a significant number of Arabs in them, that they would join him, that they would reject their Iranian leaders, their Persian leaders, and join him because he was a fellow Arab. And it turned out to be absolutely not the case.
So he didn't do any market research before he invaded, from the sounds of it?
Yeah.
Maybe get 100 Iranians in a room, just test them out a little bit.
Dictators.
If we did, I mean, not saying we will, but if we did cross the border and just, how would you feel about that? And what are your thoughts on Saddam?
Yeah. And how do you feel about this brand of shisha? Like, do you like the flavor? Do you like the taste? Or do you prefer brand Y? This is blind smoke test.
Yeah. There's no wrong answers.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, you don't like it? Get in this chamber.
Well, those meetings of dictators and their subordinates tend to not be a place for the free and open expression of dissenting opinions.
Right.
It's like the Dr. Evil thing where you just got the button that sends them into the alligator pit if they say, "Oh, that's not the greatest idea ever, sir." Wonderful, of course. They will hail you as heroes.
Yeah, it's like the zenith of the ego if it goes completely unchecked. If there's nothing stopping you from your own
and this is
crazy thoughts.
This is why it's so important for anyone in a position of leadership to promote that free dialogue, to allow people to offer dissenting opinions, and then you can arrive at a sensible policy.
It's so tempting not to, though, isn't it? As you escalate your power, it's so tempting to go, do you know what? there's a reason why I'm at the top, because I know stuff and I'm clever and my instinct is great. Let's just get rid of all the other people that help.
Yes.
You see it with musicians after they've had an album made with a team and producers and writers. They go, I could do that.
Yeah. Or
And then they
comedians
bin
for
them
that
all
matter.
off.
I know it's funny. Why aren't you laughing? I'm laughing inside.
Yeah. You can find your little niche crowd, but if you want to appeal to more people, you kind of have to, check with the larger world.
Yes.
But anyway,
you gotta read the room, as it were.
Yeah.
So Saddam's not reading the room, or he is, and anyone who's reading from a different script gets a bullet in the back of the head.
Yeah.
Anyway, this invasion does not go as planned, and it rapidly breaks down into trench warfare, with the Iranians using their much larger population to launch waves of attacks. The war drags on for 8 bloody years. It's a massive failure for Saddam, but from that failure, this monumental palace is born.
Right.
To mask the catastrophic failure of the invasion, he ordered great building projects to be commenced, and he built 100 palaces like this during his reign.
So it's like a reverse psychology kind of thing. In the face of failure, you show success. I've read also that end of the world cults do that. When the day comes that they predicted that the world would end and goes, and the next day they're all, the leaders presumably feeling a bit humiliated or embarrassed or needing to distract, they actually go into a recruitment drive straight away in order to kind of create an energy around the thing and be seen to be fine. And it's
we were crazy, but we weren't crazy enough. So we need to go full crazy.
We need to get more people.
110 people to drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
80 was not enough to summon our alien masters.
Yeah, we need to sacrifice more. So there's a kind of, if you failed, go out and do something strong straight away.
Yeah. When in doubt, double down.
Okay, so why build a palace here exactly? Is the location significant?
Absolutely. For a megalomaniac like Saddam, the location was highly symbolic. Saddam sought to connect himself with the ancient Babylonian rulers. And the Babylonian emperor, in particular, Nebuchadnezzar, had a palace on this spot. So, Saddam Hussein says, I too will have a palace in exactly the same location. Surrounding this palace are the ruins of the ancient storied city of Babylon. He basically plonked his new building right in the middle of this absolutely precious historic site. He had this phrase, from Nebuchadnezzar to Saddam Hussein, Babylon will rise again.
Okay. I mean, a poem is a good way to get things into the public psyche.
True.
But it does kind of depend on how you rhyme Hussein, because I don't say again, I say again. So the poem is kind of dependent on pronouncing again.
Maybe
wrong.
It scans better in Arabic. I can't say for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Babylon is one of the most famous cities of antiquity. It was the capital of southern Mesopotamia, also known as Babylonia, from the early 2nd millennium to the early 1st millennium BCE. And Mesopotamia, along with Egypt, is the oldest recorded civilization in the world. So this is where everything started. This is where the shift from hunting and gathering to settled agriculture began, and the first cities emerged. And we generally associate civilization, our definition of civilization is cities.
Yeah.
This is where writing was invented, so a super important place in human history. The Babylonians are particularly famous for creating the first legal code, Hammurabi's Code. And when you can actually go and see tablets with Hammurabi's Code on them. I believe there's one in the British Museum, though replicas have been made so that people can view it. And do you want to guess what many of these initial laws applied to?
So back in the day, proper old school times. Pick up your ox's droppings.
You're coming closer to it. So think about it. When humans started living together in these dense conurbations, the big concern was, okay, what happens if something goes wrong? Like, how do we have a law code that deals with everyday issues?
Yeah.
Because things like murder and stuff are not going to happen that often. But it has things like, if you build a wall that's not safe and it falls and injures someone, you have to pay them so much in recompense. A lot of it is what we would call today like kind of civil safety codes.
Right.
So very clever when you think about it. You don't write the laws for the extreme situations. You deal with those as they come up. You write the laws for the everyday stuff.
Well, I feel sorry for the first person who fell on by a wall for them to be the example that the law had to change for.
Yeah, it's like, and you know, in revising a law, 'cause it's in stone, like takes a lot of effort. You chip off the old law and put the new one in there.
Yeah, Ishmael's wall.
Ishmael's wall.
the law. And there'll be like a whole compensation package for Ishmael's family, a kind of crowdfunder.
A crowdfunder. They actually had to change the disciplinary regulations at my high school because of me.
Really?
Yes, because I misbehaved so much because I got in a lot of fights in school.
At school?
Yeah.
I thought you meant in your professor work now.
No. Oh, no, though that too. Come to think of it.
Scrapping.
No. I went to a fancy private school in Tarrytown called Hackley, and I got in trouble a lot for fighting mostly. But detention was after school, and I didn't want to miss sports practice. So I said, "Look, can I pick up garbage during the day?" Which was unusual, and they were like, "Okay." And they start to call it daytime detention. I went back to the school a couple of years ago, and now it's like an official thing. They have daytime detention. I think I should make a donation to the school with a stipulation they have to change it to Sasha's detention.
Yeah.
My memory will live on.
That would be a beautiful legacy.
I mean, it's one thing to name a building, but to name detention after you, I mean, come on. That's pretty sweet.
And I think if you do go to a private school, you have a duty to be a bit of a hooligan to offset the kind of, you know.
Yeah, the poshness of it.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. So back to Mesopotamia. Babylon is also the home of the legendary Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world.
Okay. I had no idea this place was so significant.
Oh, absolutely.
And in the Bible, I feel like, just from memory, it's depicted as quite a sort of wicked place, lots of paganism and ungodliness. Is that?
My Bible knowledge is not deep. I know probably more about the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita than I do about the Bible, to be honest.
Okay. But yeah, just from memory, maybe Lewis can confirm or deny that.
Yeah. I know that Bob Marley talks about it a lot, but I think he uses it as a metaphor for like modern society.
Right, and David Gray, of course.
Society. And David Gray, of course.
Babylon. Why? I mean, it's a big question to ask Babylon.
Why?
Yeah. Why?
It has kind of become this catchphrase for, I don't know, capitalist excess maybe, or lack of godliness. Or the Babylonians are actually very religious. Just weren't Christian.
Yeah.
You're right, Tom. Yeah, often associated with wickedness and idolatry.
Idolatry. Yeah. Well, basically,
so full of God that he doesn't even know what the word idolatry means.
This is a bit of European propaganda, though, right? Any place that wasn't Christian is somehow, decadent
Wicked.
and sinful and
dreadful people.
idol worshippers.
So how does Saddam go about building this palace?
Right. Well, construction starts in 1986, and he called it the Summer Palace. He first destroys an existing village here and builds this giant artificial hill over it. And this is what the palace sits on. Obviously, it's called Saddam Hill. Workers were apparently driven here each day in blacked out cars and then blindfolded to avoid a security risk in the ongoing war. He didn't want anyone to know the location of this palace.
That's a very intense start to your shift, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know why they make us do that. It seems a bit overkill, but...
yeah, who knows where this place is? We could be in France right now.
Yeah, just in case we're not actually being paid. We're here against our will.
Yeah. Please help us.
As part of Sasha's rehabilitation for fighting with his fellow professors at uni.
No, it was high school. It was not uni.
No,
I'm a good colleague at uni. I have not carried on.
You can't help it. You can't.
I can. I really can help it.
He refuses. So what does Saddam fill the palace with then?
Well, paintings, murals in which he's depicted as ruling the ancient world from a chariot, being pulled by horses as though he, Saddam Hussein, was the reincarnation of these great rulers of old. He also had crystal chandeliers, the faucets, the toilet, and the door handles were all of gold. Now you know where Trump got the idea. Every brick of his palace has an uppercase S, a lowercase d, and an uppercase H inscribed in the brick. Every single brick.
Wow.
For Saddam Hussein.
Just in case he forgets his Wi-Fi
Yeah.
password. It seems like he's really trying to write himself into mythology here.
Quite literally write himself into mythology. Yeah, again, the dream of every dictator, to create these great monuments, slap their name on it, and in the belief that somehow that will grant them eternal life, which it never does.
I think it's also, if you are in that part of the world, maybe it's more entrenched in the dialogue, in the mythology, so you're maybe more inclined. We don't really see that with our prime ministers, acting like this, because we don't really have that kind of legacy as a country.
No, but I think that all egomaniacs, Western, Eastern, Southern, Northern, it doesn't really matter. They all want to make it about them, not about their people, not about the good of their. And they may say, "Oh, I'm doing this for X, Y, and Z, for the empire, for the nation," but really, it's about them. It's about slapping their name on things.
Right. So, what was the rest of the country like at this time? Were they also having a good time?
No, absolutely not. And this is one of the great injustices of it. Iraq was going through a period of terrible warfare, and the Iraqi people were in dire need of basic necessities. So this luxurious palace, filled with gold toilets, was a stark contrast to the reality that the rest of the Iraqi people were experiencing. And for all of that vicious, massive expenditure of wealth and the deprivation it must have caused his own people, he only ever spent 1 day in this palace for a grand total of 2 hours.
What? Why?
Yep.
Why was he only there for 1 day?
Well, we'll get to that. But think about that. Little of this luxury remains today. It's been stripped bare as you observe the walls covered with scrawls of graffiti. And it's because of the arrival of an outside force far greater than Saddam's ego. But we'll get to that after the break. So, the palace, as we see it now, has been ransacked. And it was because of invasion by a foreign force, not the Iranians.
So this is where the Iraq War comes in.
Yes, specifically the second Iraq War, right? Because the first one is when Saddam tries the invasion tactic again, but on Kuwait, and the U.S. Mobilizes a multinational force to eject him from Kuwait, which is very successful. Senior. This is George Bush Sr., yes. Now, the second one, which actually involves the full-on invasion of Iraq, and there's a lot of debate about whether this was really necessary, which we'll get to, happens after the 9/11 attacks.
Right.
So what's going on at this point is that there's a lot of debate about how dangerous Saddam Hussein still is. And this is when George Bush Jr. is in power. And what really happened is that you have a couple of real foreign policy hawks, right? You have Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld. And Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld were very aggressive in their policies. They really believed in this kind of neoconservative mindset that America was a force for good and that it could, conduct nation building and really take out America's enemies as sort of a preemptive action. They pitched their plan to Bush Sr., and Bush Sr. was having none of it. He basically turfed them out and said, "This is crazy. Like this kind of aggression is uncalled for and it's a waste of resources." So they immediately start working on his son, and he buys it. He goes in for that.
Okay, so hang on. Why were they talking to Senior? What was he still? No, this was before.
This was before the war. This is they wanted to push for more. Years before, exactly.
And then years later.
And then years later,
okay,
they're still working
comes
on.
In. Okay, and he's a bit more.
The son is much more receptive. He's more easily manipulable, and this is how Rumsfeld and Cheney end up in power and really being the dictators of policy.
Right.
And there's a lot of bad intelligence going around in an attempt to justify this more aggressive foreign policy that Cheney and Rumsfeld and Paul Wolfowitz are all pushing. And at the core of this is that Saddam poses an existential threat because his regime has weapons of mass destruction. Now, there's a lot of debate about it even at the time. And really the more reliable intelligence sources say, we've looked and we haven't found it. I mean, at one point you actually have international inspectors going in and they cannot find evidence of a functioning nuclear weapons program. But because he's got Cheney on one shoulder and Rumsfeld on the other, Bush Jr. is determined to plow ahead anyway. And he gives the following ultimatum. Saddam Hussein and his sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours. Their refusal to do so will result in military conflict commenced at a time of our choosing.
It's pretty articulate for George. I assume it was ghostwritten.
Yeah, and they already had, U.S. and its allies already had Iraq pretty well bottled up. They had a no-fly zone in the north and the south to protect the Kurdish population. Like, it was kind of a defanged tiger at the point, but Bush is not going to be deterred. And really, Rumsfeld and Cheney are not going to be deterred.
Yeah, I mean, and it seemed like a reaction to 9/11 in terms of we need to be seen. In the same way that Saddam built his palace in the face of failure, George Jr. needed to show strength.
Yeah, but they're already going to invade Afghanistan. But it kind of reminds me of that scene from the first Star Wars where they decide to blow up this planet. And
I haven't seen it, by the way.
And Princess Leia says, "Oh well, this is where the rebel base is." She's lying, and then he's like, "Fine." And then they say, "Go ahead and blow up the planet we're next to." And she's like, "We didn't do anything. We're a peaceful planet." And they're like, "Well, the one you named is just too obscure. No one's going to notice if we blow up that one." It's like, who's going to notice if we invade Afghanistan? But Iraq, people are going to notice.
Right.
So America invades Iraq with the explicit purpose of deposing Saddam Hussein from power. They move very, very quickly, the so-called Thunder Run towards the capital, Baghdad. They take out all the defenses and all the aircraft, so they completely blind the Iraqi military. A lot of the Iraqi military at that point, once they see the way things are going, they desert. They just leave their equipment where it is. It's only really the hardcore ones, like the Republican Guard, that hold on and are going to fight. And once the military falls apart, the army kind of chases Saddam out of the capital and he goes into hiding.
Okay, so this is when they end up at the palace.
Yes. Well, members of Saddam's elite Republican Guard were entrenched in the palace, and on April 8th, 2003, units from the 101st Airborne Division, one of the elite divisions of the American military, launch an attack. After a few days of intense, close-quarter fighting, Saddam's great monument to his new Iraqi empire fell into American hands. The U.S. troops who went into this palace were stunned by this luxury that they encountered. I mean, just the amount of wealth that had been poured into this thing. And in the chaos that followed, the palace was looted and vandalized. Okay. The American and British forces, as one can imagine, didn't always treat Saddam Hussein's palaces with utmost respect.
Okay, so it was the soldiers who did this then?
Yes, the soldiers that did. I mean, this is why a lot of the graffiti's in English.
Right. Dave was here. Yeah, that does sound like something one of
Kilroy.
our boys would do.
Yeah.
Mike loves Lydia. It's nice. I mean, it's nice. At least that's nice.
Now, there's no doubt that some of these gold fittings were lost or detached and are now trophies on someone's desk. And as you pointed out, the palace is absolutely covered in graffiti. Cruz chillin' in Saddam's famous spot,
It feels like they're kind of torn. It's a kind of personal almost when someone writes on something grandiose. Just go, here we go.
Well, the tradition of military graffiti actually goes back more than 1,000 years.
Oh, okay.
Like the Roman soldiers used to leave graffiti as well. It's one of the ways that we learn about the lives of ordinary soldiers, actually, is finding this inscribed graffiti.
Right.
And who knows what motivates it? I mean, graffiti was a big thing in Vietnam as well, and World War II. Maybe it's this sense of, these young men very much out of place. Who knows, if they'll be alive tomorrow, wanting to leave some small mark. Maybe it's an act of defiance, like, oh, this was your territory, but it's ours now. Almost like, I don't know, like a dog urinating on its space.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a sense of that, so much of war is just sitting around waiting for things to happen.
Yeah.
And when those things happen, they're often very terrible. Like, you got to pass the time somehow. So you just do a little doodle or a little cartoon or a little scribble.
Yeah, it's expression.
Yeah. But, that sign, I mean, the most common is just people signing their name and a date, just to say, like, I was here.
Yeah, it puts it in stone, literally.
Yeah. I mean, they might not last to see the end of the conflict, but some small part of them remains behind.
Okay, so what are they doing? They're just kind of hanging out, sitting in the palace? What do they do?
Well, the palace was actually transformed into a U.S. military base, and it was home to 2,000 troops. It was called, appropriately enough, Camp Babylon.
Okay, so Saddam is on the run. He's not upstairs in the master room popping down.
No.
Coming back or anything.
And fuel his escape, he's withdrawn a fortune from the Central Iraqi Bank, about $1 billion, in order to fund his escape. And he thought, there would be a pushback, there would be a counterattack, like Iraqis would fight back at some point. But he's fighting a losing battle, and it's not going to last for very long. The forces, American forces, Allied forces, eventually find Saddam in December of 2003, and he was hiding in a hole in the ground. And the video that you see of him, he's got the long beard, he's kind of dirty and bedraggled. And the Allied forces turn him over to the Iraqis, who put him on trial and execute him. And it was a pretty brief operation, from beginning to end. But then things don't go according to plan. Really, actually, there wasn't much of a plan. One of the great tragedies of this conflict is, well, there's two tragedies. One is that 300,000 Iraqis are killed, 2/3 of them being civilians. You got to remember that most of the bombs dropped on Baghdad, which is a very, very large city, were not these precision-guided laser bombs. They were just gravity bombs. And sure, you might have been aiming for a military base, but if you miss, you're going to hit an apartment building or a hospital or a school. So hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians who had already suffered under Saddam's regime are going to die in the air campaign. But the Americans didn't really have a solid plan for what to do with Iraq afterwards. They were so eager to start this invasion. And one of the things they do, or they're committed to doing, is what they call de-Baathification. So Saddam Hussein's party is the Ba'ath Party. And they basically remove all of those guys from power because they didn't want that the people loyal to Saddam to remain with influence. But the problem was, you're getting rid of some pretty brutal guys and some torturers and some secret police, but you're also getting rid of all the experienced judges, all the experienced civil servants. Basically, anybody who knows how to run a government is going to be removed. And you also completely disband the original Iraqi army, which, was a functioning military force.
I'm interested to know what happened to the judge that sentenced him, because there's footage of Saddam shouting at the judge, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's an incredible scene, that court scene.
Yeah,
of him just standing up and berating the judge.
Yeah.
And I would love to know where he is now, that judge. What happened to him?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Because if he was deposed, where did he go? Did he move countries? Did he retire? Did he go into something else?
Did
he get his own reality show?
Yeah. And the other thing is that he gets on a reality show, like that would be really funny. Yeah. Actually,
if one good thing came out of the Iraq War, the judge
has his own reality TV show. I'd like to see the merch for that one.
He's got really tacky daughters, and they've all got Kardashian style makeup.
Exactly. You got these blinged out Mercedes. And the thing about Saddam as a dictator is, for all his brutality, one of the things he was very successful at was in keeping this internecine ethnic conflict at bay and keeping the Shia and Sunni in his country from going at each other's throats. Once he's gone, gloves are off, and everybody has scores to settle. Right. So an insurgency rapidly builds, and that is going to drag on for years.
Is that Taliban? Or was that later when the US left? I remember seeing footage of the final plane leaving, and there was this horrible scene at the airport where civilians were trying to grab onto the wings and trying to get into the hold, and just escape because they were terrified.
This is actually the most fearful group is the Islamic State group operating in
ISIS.
Exactly. That's the one that everyone's really worried about. Yeah. So you go from having a brutal but organized dictatorship into a chaotic civil war, and it's going to be exacerbated by the Iranians supporting the Shia against the Sunni, and then you're going to have other interest groups in the Middle East, like the Saudi Arabians, are going to support the Sunnis, and this is why one of the reasons why everything is such literally a bloody mess today, and you get the Syrian conflict as well because it all spins into it. Then you have the Kurdish minority in the north, which is a kind of breakaway nationalist group, which the Turkish are really afraid of because the Turks are afraid that the Kurds in Iraq are going to try to ally with the Kurds in southern Turkey and create their own state. So,
massive can of worms.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a bit like West Ham's rivalry with Millwall, actually.
That's going to mean absolutely nothing to our viewers.
Well, if you like soccer,
they don't.
It up.
They probably don't.
All right, we'll leave it then.
Maybe you could go like Cubs and White Sox. That would be a better
it's a bit
comparison.
like the rivalry between the Cubs and the White Sox.
There you go. Now you got it.
Yeah?
Yeah, which also occasionally breaks down into massive internecine civil war with people hurling brats at each other and so on and so forth. So the palace was. Oh wait, no, I do have to tell a baseball story because baseball rivalries can be really, really serious.
Yeah.
And two of the places where people take it the most seriously, besides Chicago, are Boston and New York. And one of my partners was from Boston. And there's this great scene where I can't remember which team was playing at Boston, but they'd made the mistake of dispensing some kind of novelty item that had batteries in it. And one of the outfielders for the opposing team gets too close to the stands and apparently gets into some kind of jawing with his fans. And they start throwing batteries at him. And I said to my partner, again, who's from outside of Boston, I was like, I mean, batteries? Like, I just want to throw popcorn or nuts, but throwing batteries? And her response as a proper Bostonian is like, well, you don't know what he said to them.
Oh, nice.
Maybe he had it coming.
We need context. Watching a guy getting hurled with batteries.
Yeah. Back to Saddam Hussein's palace. The palace.
So what happened? What's the palace doing today? It looks. I mean, we've got photo here.
Yeah,
it's still there.
It's still there. Well, it was formally handed over to the Iraqi Ministry of Culture in 2005, and the U.S. troops eventually leave in 2011. Today, the Iraqi government has made a big grant to that is a modern day, not today. The Iraqi government has made a big grant to the local community to fix up the palace and to use it as a cultural center. But the money was misspent and purloined, and the work was never done. So today it remains what you see, a neglected ruin. But there's good news, which is that the area around the palace and the ruins of Babylon is one of the safest in Iraq. It's a beacon of civilization, once again, in a land characterized by chaos. And though it has a mix of Shia and Sunni, it has not suffered from the sectarian violence that has paralyzed so many other parts of Iraq. The factories are churning, the streets pulsate with life, the children race off to school, crowds mix in the markets, and taxis glide by.
I'm so glad to hear this. Yeah, so it's over 20 years now since the invasion, and Tony Blair, our prime minister at the time, is hated by a lot of people for it still. Like, if his name comes up, when people boo and jeer and practically spit on the floor for it. They really hate him for it. How does it sit in America now?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that I think the world is a better place without someone like Saddam Hussein. And I mean, the man he nerve gassed his own people. He started this bloody 8-year war with his neighbor. He invaded Kuwait. These were all, unforgivable crimes. But, Iraq still doesn't have a properly functioning government. It's still chaotic. The people have suffered immensely from it. And an important fact, the weapons of mass destruction didn't exist. There were no Iraqi weapons of mass destruction. It was illegal. It was illegal. Was it morally justified? Well, that's another question to ask. But I think the takeaway point, and it's one that I think American military leaders well understand, American political leaders maybe less so, is, if you are, I remember that there's a student actually told me once this sort of story about right before the invasion of Iraq. It's a joke. It's not real. Is that the American president, after this is successful, and it would be successful, is going to be handed one of two letters, and one of them's going to say, "Congratulations, you've liberated Germany, a place that has a foundation for democracy, thriving economy. Like, you're going to have to rebuild it, but eventually, it'll join the ranks of democratic nations." And the other is going to say, "Congratulations, you've liberated Yugoslavia."
Yeah, it's is Yugoslavia being liberated now?
Yeah, I mean, and we saw what they had to go through too. I mean, this is the sad fact of brutal dictators, is they often keep a lid on potentially even more violent and long-lasting conflict. There's a reason why it sometimes takes a brutal leader. It's because these are areas that would fall into chaotic brutality if they weren't mutually all terrified of some greater power. It's the Hobbesian Leviathan.
Yeah.
So these things are never simple. And anytime we treat any of these wars as simple matters, that it's just a matter of removing one guy and that'll be peace and prosperity. Like, we're sorely mistaken.
It's projecting an ideology. It's also being an outsider looking in.
Yeah.
With your own version of morality, and not factoring in the fact that it may need a brutal person to oversee and to contain a brutal environment.
Yeah, and I think
has it, this Babylon sounds like it's, currently in a good state from what you described, but how do America see it as worth it? It's easy to just disappear and go, oh, 1 million people died. How many people? I've heard 1 million people died as a result of that war.
Well, yeah.
And is that worse?
The direct
or better
Red
than
Cross
actions?
estimates that the direct casualties were between 280 and 350,000, of which only 1/3 were military, the rest were civilian. What the numbers that have died afterwards? Like, I haven't seen the estimates. If you say 1 million, then I'll take that.
Okay, so somewhere between 300,000 and 1 million. I've heard those two ends, right?
Yeah.
So you then go, he was nerve gassing his own people. He was not a nice person. He was immoral by our standards, and then you go, well, which one's worse?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And you also ask the question, this idea that we reify the concept of freedom. Like, we say, of course people would rather be free, of course they'd rather be self-determined, they'd rather be democratic, they'd rather be free market. They'd also rather have electricity and a functioning government, and not be worried about being dragged away by strangers. Like, living in Saddam Hussein was a terrifying experience. There's this one moment where he had a meeting of the Ba'ath Party, like all the important officials in the Ba'ath Party. We're talking of hundreds of guys in a room. This is shortly after he assumes power. And he walks up onto the stage all friendly and smiling, and then he starts to read out a list of names, and you just see the secret police just coming in and just grabbing these guys out their seats, and they are never seen again.
I've seen the footage.
So it's really 6 of one, half dozen of another. Like, at what point is the evil so great that the chaos that will be unleashed at the removal of it is nonetheless better, And that's something that you really have to ask the Iraqis about.
How do they feel?
What?
Now, what's the legacy of Saddam being removed?
I mean, I don't think anybody misses him, but I'm sure they wish that there was a better plan in place,
sure.
Rather than, selling off all the oil wells to Halliburton or whatever. And that's it. Like, it's one thing to win a war, but to win the peace is something else entirely.
Yeah, that's a whole different game.
And you really got to think about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the story of Saddam's palace.
Producer Lewis here. Thanks for listening to this episode of Where Did Everyone Go? New episodes every Wednesday and Sunday. Follow, comment, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out.